With that, Trevor, are you ready for rapid fire?
Sure I am.
That last question takes us into this question. Since the week after the season is the regular season is now a recruiting dead period, that first week of December, coaches can't stay in California to recruit, as we were saying. So that means the Irish don't necessarily need to end the season in California anymore, as they've done since 1999 when they finished at either USC or Stanford. So I did ask Marcus Freeman about the possibility, like what it would mean to maybe have a future home game Thanksgiving weekend instead of traveling.
I haven't thought about that. I really haven't. I have not thought about having a home game the last game of the year. If I have a strong conviction at some point that that's what's best for our program, I'll have that conversation with Pete. Right now, that's just not something on the top of my mind that I'm worried about. I think the way the season's scheduled, it's scheduled. An opportunity to go play USC at USC for a rivalry game it's exciting. That's what we're looking forward to.
No, it is exciting, but again, if the rationale behind always finishing the season on the West Coast for these last 25 years is with the idea that your coaches can stay out there on the West Coast and just spread, fan out and go recruit, if that's gone now because that's a dead period, again, I don't expect to like it's going to necessarily change next year, but these contracts with both Stanford and USC are still pending, like for going forward, for example. And, Irish English, I do agree with what you're saying. Like he did, basically shut both of them down. He didn't seem that anxious, to talk about either of them. I can't say as I blame him because, I do get it. He's got to focus on the game, and that's kind of what he was referring to. They've got a game this weekend. But wouldn't it be exciting going forward if you just flip this thing, maybe the Stanford series, home and away, assuming they're going to keep Stanford, maybe that goes back to just being an October series, regardless of the location, and the USC series goes to the end of the season, and it's always Thanksgiving weekend. One year it's in Los Angeles, the next year it's in South Bend. You just make Notre Dame USC a Thanksgiving weekend rivalry edition. So you get a home game every other year in Thanksgiving instead of traveling to the West Coast every year. What do you think, Trevor?
I mean, that'd be nice. I highly doubt that USC would agree to those terms, considering they would have to play in the cold. I mean, I went to the game last year.
Well, they are in the Big Ten now. Like, to me, that, kind of changes things, right?
Oh, I agree. I mean, I don't think that it's a mystery that their final two Big Ten games, one of them was at UCLA and the other one was at home against Nebraska. You know what I mean? So I think they're going to try to be very careful of how they schedule their games, just because I just don't think that they want to go and play in the cold. I mean, even back when last year they came in October and played, and I mean, it's funny watching the different players warm up. I'll put it that way. Notre Dame's running around out there in cutoffs, and the USC players are out there in the ski masks to keep them warm, and long sleeves, and everybody's walking around in parkas. So, I mean, I love that idea. I think it'd be great just because it kind of adds to rivalry weekend, because it only seems like Notre Dame can partake in it.
I think
every other year.
Look, it's not like like Washington and Oregon are cool this time of year as well, and like they were just in Seattle a few weeks ago. So I will be curious to see how accommodating the Big Ten is. Are they always going to work around you? It's like if you're taking the million, the bucket loads of money that USC and UCLA are taking to be part of the Big Ten, like playing Big Ten teams in November in some cold weather is part of the deal as well. I get why, it's literally been since 1959 that USC made a trip to South Bend in November. It's been a long time, and there's a reason they obviously did away with it. As for the Stanford thing, from 88 to I think 98, they, it used to be only in October. They played all those games in October against Stanford, whether it was here or in Palo Alto. And then it was in 99 where they started this alternating deal. And, and even I would say, even if you are not able to come to that kind of accommodation with USC, if you're Notre Dame, I do think that it is at least worth, like if you're Notre Dame and these trips to the West Coast are going to continue, like if this recruiting dead period is going to continue going forward, which I believe that it probably will because of the college football playoff and everything, and like they're trying to take some things off the plates of these coaches because you do still have early signing day coming up. You're going to have coaching carousels. You're going to have teams in the playoffs and all that kind of stuff. So they were trying to, pull some things back that the coaches didn't have to be, responsible for and spreading themselves around in December. So if that's going to continue going forward, like if you're Notre Dame, wouldn't you want to, even if it's, every other year, whether it's USC or somebody else, wouldn't you want to potentially try to have some home games Thanksgiving weekend so you don't have to worry about traveling Thanksgiving weekend? Like Boston College, the infamous 1993 Boston College game, that was the last game of the regular season. That was at Notre Dame Stadium in late November, that same weekend, before all of this, like you grew up pretty much, with this knowing that you're either going to go to USC or Stanford every year. So, but it wasn't always like that. So it seems like there are some new possibilities for Notre Dame going forward as a result of the way this calendar has changed.
I think it'd be great. I think with the expanded playoff as well, too. I think it'd be nice to every other year Notre Dame ends their season at home in South Bend. But I'm going to be interested to see who it would be. You know what I mean? I want it to be somebody of, I'm trying to think of the best way to put that, like somebody of substance, like a good rivalry game. Like I love rivalry.
You want a good TV matchup.
I like rivalry weekend in college football. It's fun. It's a lot more exciting when you say who's playing this week. Oh, you got, Alabama, Auburn, you got Ohio State, Michigan, you got Notre Dame, USC. It carries significantly less weight when you're like, we got Notre Dame, Stanford. Like, it's cool, I guess. If it was 2012, it'd be awesome. But
and that's why I think, like that would be perfect just to keep in October if you're going to keep Stanford on the schedule, and then you just flip flop it, who's hosting it every other year. But the ACC has been more than willing to send Southern schools to South Bend in November. Like Florida State's played here in early November, twice in the last 5 or 6 years or something like that. They played here early November a few years back. Clemson has played here as well. So, send Miami, put Miami there Thanksgiving weekend, put Florida State there Thanksgiving weekend, or Clemson. There's a lot of different options if the ACC is willing to be part of that as well. I just think it would be cool, for everybody, for Notre Dame to actually be home Thanksgiving weekend. I know a lot of people say, well, the students are gone. Well, it's Thanksgiving around the whole country, and other teams are having, other teams are having home games Thanksgiving weekend, and their students show up for those games. So
I think students in Columbus don't really care that it's Thanksgiving on Saturday.
That's right.
I'm gonna be honest.
When it's Notre Dame, Michigan, they will show up.
Mm-hmm.
They do show up. That's right. Columbus and Ann Arbor and wherever it happens to be. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
So let's put the top college football playoff contenders into tiers here, Trevor. You can make your tiers as big as you want. There can be one team in a tier. There can be 2 or 3 or 5 or however many. I actually took mine down. I've got 5 total tiers.
Okay.
In mind. So what would your tiers look like? What is your first tier? What would be the teams in your first tier?
Tier 1 teams for me are going to be Oregon, Ohio State, and Notre Dame. Some people aren't going to like it, but Notre Dame is one of the hottest teams in college football right now. And I don't know very many teams from a matchup standpoint that would want to go head-to-head with Notre Dame. Home, away, neutral. They're hot right now. Oregon I put in there because they're undefeated and have yet to lose. They've won ugly, but at the end of the day, when you don't lose, going undefeated is really hard. And I think some people take that for granted sometimes, like, oh, well, they're just going to go undefeated. And it's like, oh, yes, because that happens all the time. Going undefeated is hard, right? So, and then Ohio State right now, I think that they're one of the most battle-tested teams that's up at the top. They played Penn State, who's in the top 5. They played Oregon, who was in the top 5. They played IU, who was in the top 5. Now, I know we can kind of get into the conversation of Well, did IU are Penn State and IU really two of the top 5 best teams in college football? It's like, I mean, no, but at the end of the day, when you play 3 top 5 opponents, like that's worth noting, right? Tier 2.
I just, for the record, before you go on, I might just have to start calling you Vince Jr. because I didn't realize like how overboard, you are with the, like I get it. I think Notre Dame is a good team as well. Tier 1 up there with Oregon and Ohio State. I don't know if I'm
No?
quite on board with that.
Okay.
But it's your tier. That's fine. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. No, fair enough. I mean,
I've got Oregon, Ohio State, and Texas in my tier 1.
Okay. Texas was a weird team for me because
I flirted with, do I put Texas in tier 2? And I've got Notre Dame and Penn State on tier 2. I do think that Notre Dame is better than Penn State. I like them in a head-to-head and the whole thing. I feel like Texas, just the consistency that they have had throughout most of the season moves them, a little bit above both Notre Dame and Penn State for me. But I've got Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, tier 1, Notre Dame, Penn State is my tier 2.
The reason why I put Notre Dame in tier 1 is because I think they're closer to Ohio State and Oregon than they are to Penn State. And then I guess you could make the argument that I could just have Notre Dame solely in tier 2. Like, I like Texas. I just don't know what kind of football team that they are. You know what I mean? They're consistent. They also don't have a ranked win. Like it's weird. Right now their marquee wins are over Vanderbilt and Arkansas. I mean, I guess now you could probably throw Florida in that mix because Florida's upsetting people and Texas is the only team in the SEC that's handled them.
Right.
But I don't know. Texas has 1 ranked win. They played at home and they lost by 15 points. So Texas is a weird team for me.
I mean, at the time, and that's the thing, as far as the playoff committee is concerned, ranked wins are teams that are ranked right now. But Texas has actually beaten 3 teams that were ranked at the time of the wins: Michigan, Oklahoma, and Vanderbilt. So again, like right now, no, none of those teams are ranked. Just like Notre Dame, like Notre Dame can claim 4 ranked wins, but only 2 of those teams are obviously still ranked right now. So I get what you're saying. I do. I really love the skill, talent, and the speed that Texas has. Like my eyeball test tells me that Texas is a better team, and I like Texas. Again, like when I look at pure skill talent, I like Texas a lot better than I like Penn State, for example.
Oh, absolutely. No, I do too. I mean, that's why I put Notre Dame in my tier 1. Like, people can call it a homer take. That's fine. But I watch college football every single Saturday, and there's not a lot of teams right now that are playing at the level that Notre Dame is. I mean, that's just, and Penn State is not one of them. I mean, I'm very bullish about that. And I don't care that they just played Minnesota at Minnesota. Don't try to tell me how tough it is to play at a 5 and 6 Big Ten teams stadium. Notre Dame is not beating Minnesota by 1 point. So that's why I just can't put Penn State and Notre Dame in the same tier.
That's fair. I got you.
Penn State for me, like I to finish my tiers for like national championship contenders, I was going to put Texas and Georgia in my tier 2.
Okay.
And then my tier 3 was probably going to be Penn State, IU, I guess Tennessee, if you want to throw them in there, Boise State, SMU. That's probably just spur of the moment. If I had to think, that's probably what I would have as my tiers.
Okay. My tier 3 is Georgia and Tennessee. I've got them there. And then my tier 4 is I've got a lot in tier 4, actually. Miami, SMU, Indiana, Boise State, and Clemson. And I know obviously some of those teams have 1 loss. Clemson obviously has 2 losses. I think that those teams are all relatively equal. And again, like I think the biggest thing most of us are looking for, like from a Notre Dame perspective, 1, we're looking at, is Notre Dame going to be ranked ahead of Penn State this week? And we'll talk about that here in just a second. 2, what is the committee going to do with Indiana. 3, what are they going to do with teams like Georgia and Tennessee, who, even though they have one more loss than Indiana, like, are they going to be ahead of them, like the AP poll had, for example? And then 4, what are they going to do with those 3-loss SEC teams? I think that that's going to be really interesting. And my tier 5 is Alabama, Ole Miss, Arizona State, South Carolina.
Okay. I like that. I like that you put Arizona State in there. I respect that. No, that's good.
They're one of the hottest teams in the country right now. I think they deserve to be in there.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. I mean, it's just, I like this question. This is a lot of fun. It's just so tough to put teams into tiers because college football is so wide open right now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was talking to a buddy about this earlier today. We talked about it yesterday too, is I do firmly believe that, Ohio State, Notre Dame are 2 of the hottest teams in college football right now. Also, if you told me that both of those teams lose in week 1 or round 1 of the playoffs, I don't know if I'd be surprised, just because of how crazy college football is right now. If you would have told me that Alabama was going to lose 24-3 to Oklahoma last Saturday, I would have laughed in your face. And here we are. This is just a crazy season of college football, which again is just why it's so hard to put teams into tiers. So
here's again, like the Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State discussion, and I'm not, again, I do think that Notre Dame is a better team than Penn State, but we've talked before, like, I do think that because of Penn State's defense, I think the game would have some similarities just to the way Texas A&M, like the Texas A&M game played out, for example. Like the Texas game, like Texas would hit some explosive plays against Notre Dame. Like, what I would really like to see that we didn't get to see, and I think a lot of people feel, I'm not holding this against Notre Dame. I'm just saying, like, for me to consider Notre Dame like in that tier 1, like you're talking about with Oregon and Ohio State, like I do think that, Notre Dame and Ohio State, like there's not a big gap, there's just a little gap really that separates them. But I would like to have seen Notre Dame go up again, like that offense, Notre Dame's offense go up against another quality defense to give me a real good point of comparison to see how I really feel like it's going to stack up. Because I think the defense is going to stack up and play against anybody. But there are going to be questions about just how many, points that Notre Dame's offense is going to be able to score against some of the better teams they're going to face once they do get into the playoff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's totally fair. That's, again, you kind of start getting into the argument of, well, Notre Dame's playing a lot of inferior opponents, but they're doing what they should to inferior opponents, which again, just all feeds into why it baffles my mind that Penn State is ranked so high as they are, because they are also playing inferior opponents and winning by 1. So, the Texas argument is an interesting one, because a lot of the things defending, and not saying that this is what you said, but a lot of the things that defend Texas is literally just the eye test. I watch that team and I just believe that they're going to be able to be better than Notre Dame.
I mean, it's completely fair to say, well, Texas lost to the only good team that they played. But, like, if we're going to be completely fair, well, Notre Dame lost to the worst team that they played.
Sure. I mean, it comes down to the lens of how you look at things. I'm somebody that
maybe not the worst team, but you know what I'm saying.
Like worst.
Because as soon as I said that, I went, well, Florida State, like NIU might give Florida State a game.
I know what you mean. I mean, it's one of those that it just kind of depends on how you evaluate. You know what I mean? It comes down to, it comes down to if people value losses or if they value wins, right? Because if we're talking about losses, then like I understand why people are upset why Notre Dame is probably going to be the 5th ranked team in the country.
I mean, losses are part of the evaluation, but at the same time, it's part of the evaluation. It's
100%.
not the only, and that's Notre Dame's biggest detractors, which tend to be, more like, I don't even know, is it media based or is it even fan based? Like everyone, keeps beating this whole NIU thing, but they are disregarding the fact that Notre Dame is scoring more points and giving up fewer points than like anyone else in the country over this stretch.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I think you hit the nail on the head there, Sean. I mean, look, Notre Dame has the number 6 scoring offense in the country, and that includes their 14-point performance against Northern Illinois, right? Yes, I would have understood if the NIU thing was as at the forefront of the conversation as it is right now, if the playoff rankings came out after the Louisville game. It's like, are we just going to forget that this team 3 weeks ago lost to Northern Illinois? Like, I get that. This happened on September 7th. And since then, Notre Dame has rattled 9 consecutive wins. None of them were close. The only one that was close on the scoreboard was Louisville, and Notre Dame had the lead in that game for 52 minutes. So, there's things to pick apart, but I agree with you 100%. The loss column is a part of the evaluation. Unfortunately for Notre Dame, people will only look at it if the loss is like really bad. Nobody's even talking about, well, not nobody, but I don't even think the Oklahoma loss is weighing as much as it is on Alabama, even though Oklahoma this year is not good. They're just, well, it's Oklahoma.
Well, and that's it. Like everyone's willing to forgive Oklahoma, even though it just happened last week. And the fact that they got smacked around, and Oklahoma is, as you said, they are not good this year. They were a good defensive team, but they are not a good offensive team. And, it's already like, well, 3 losses. Are they going to get in or not? Come on, 3-loss SEC team. TD4ND says Notre Dame's offense practices against the best defense every week. To an extent, at this point in the season, it's more scout team. You're not going good on good, much at this point in the season. So,
yeah, I was going to say, like, I don't think their practices. I mean, if they are, great, because it's showing. But I don't know if they're lining up for 60 minutes, going best on best every day in practice. Yeah. That's probably
more
like
a training camp thing.
That and more like individual drill type, not full live sessions. Yeah,
right. Yeah, like you might have. Like in the early periods where you're still doing one-on-one, like receivers against DBs and that kind of stuff. Matt says, I'm not a Notre Dame believer. I believe in Notre Dame. I'm just not a Kool-Aid drinker. I'm not like full-fledged drinking that Kool-Aid. I take emotion as much out of the equation as possible, and I try to base it all on as much facts and evidence as possible. It is a really good team, but we've also been burned before. And, so like history is part of the deal as well, and again, like I would just like to have seen him play one more good defense and like see how that would have played out against another quality defense. But we didn't get to see that other than Texas A&M really, and a little bit of Louisville, but
yeah.
Joe says, join the cult. All right, here we go. So, scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence Notre Dame will be the number 4 seed in this week's playoff rankings?
2. I mean, it's not that they don't deserve it, but there is just, I don't know if somebody in the Penn State program has dirt on somebody in the committee, or if they just look. We've talked about it a lot. I've talked about it a lot. There is no argument that you can make to me why Penn State deserves to be ranked ahead of Notre Dame. Yeah, I don't hear one. And outside of, well, 1 loss to Ohio State and 1 loss to Northern Illinois. If that's the full basis and you're only looking at it in a vacuum at that, then sure, put Penn State at number 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like then in your mind, the top 4 should be Oregon, Ohio State, IU, Penn State. If the only thing that you're evaluating is Penn State's loss to Ohio State versus Notre Dame's, sure. But there's a lot more factors that go into it. If they are going to truly say, well, eye test and margin of victory and quality wins, if they truly evaluated that, Penn State would not be ranked ahead of Notre Dame.
Yeah, see, somebody, and my answer is probably a 3.5. Like yesterday, I think I talked myself into thinking that it was going to happen just because, Notre Dame keeps ascending. Army was as Vince said on the show yesterday, Army is a team that this committee had ranked number 19, and Notre Dame just beat the snot out of them this last week. So how much does that matter? Like, how much does it matter to the committee that Notre Dame beat a team the committee had ranked number 19 and Penn State struggled against a very average to below average Minnesota team. You know, like how much does that matter? And yesterday, I think I had myself talked into it more, but the more I look at it, it's just like, I don't know. So I think that, do I think that Notre Dame deserves to be ahead of Penn State based on, you know, like when you look at, you know, like every data point that you can look at, you know, again, like points scored and this and that, you know, like the whole thing. Yeah, I believe Notre Dame deserves to be ahead of Penn State, but I'm just not convinced that the committee's going to see it that way.
No, I mean, I'm in the same boat. Like, it's just nothing that the committee has shown to this point deserves Penn State to be that high. And look, and the only thing that people can come up with are hypothetical arguments. Like, what if Penn State had Notre Dame scheduled? Wouldn't they do the same? I mean, maybe, right? What if Notre Dame had Penn State schedule at home?
Penn State's Penn State's strength of schedule is only where, you know, just like Indiana moved from, what was it, like around 100 up to 50 because they played Ohio State. You know, that's the only that's got to be the only reason Penn State's strength of schedule is as strong as it is, because I looked at it last week and like the combined record of their opponents was something like 15 games under 500 for the season, you know? So like, with the exception of Ohio State, Penn State hasn't exactly gone out of its way and played anybody that great as well. Ohio State is totally propping up Penn State. All they did was lose a close home game to Ohio State, and that has kept them where they are. Otherwise, they haven't beaten anybody other than Illinois. That's, you know, and Illinois isn't even that good right now. Again, like, go ahead.
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, yes, they played Ohio State close. They also didn't score an offensive touchdown. And their only touchdown on the game came on a very early pick six. Now, again, like, I'm not knocking Penn State's defense. Like, Penn State, I'm not saying that Penn State sucks. I'm not saying that, you know, since they're number 4 and I think that they're overrated and overseeded, they should be 20th. No, I don't think that either. It's just they shouldn't be 4th.
Right.
Because there's not a solidified argument. And look, I've seen it going on in the chat. If you think that them beating Minnesota because a middle tier Big Ten away stadium is tough, that's why they should be 4th. I'm not buying it, man. I'm not. Like, look, other conferences came in and played these middle tier, tough, hard-nosed Big Ten teams in their stadiums and whooped them. Alabama just lost to Oklahoma. Not a good team. They also played Wisconsin at Wisconsin and won by 30. But for some reason, because Penn State went in there and won by 15, that's just this grueling, like, on the road. I'm not somebody that buys into it just means more because it's the Big Ten and it's harder because it's the Big Ten. Like, I look at matchups. I evaluate it from a football standpoint, not names of the school. I don't. Yeah. I can't build my argument as to why Penn State is ranked ahead of Notre Dame, because if Penn State played Notre Dame's schedule, then they might have the same record. And I don't buy into that. Do I think that Penn State?
Like, why isn't Minnesota better than what they are right now with NIL and transfer portal and everything else and all this hoopla, you know, row the boat and all that mess, you know, PJ Fleck. I mean, he's been there for 8 years now. Why aren't they better than what they are? Yeah.
No, it's weird. It's definitely weird.
I realize, you know, Minnesota's not the playoff conversation, but, you know, like you talk about that being a tough, you know, not being a tough place to play. It's not, but it should be. Everything about Minnesota should be better now in year 8 under PJ Fleck.
Yeah.
You know, like, but it's not like for Indiana in year 1 under Kurt Cignetti to have the kind of year that they're having. There's no reason Minnesota couldn't have had a year like that.
Sure.
Like any time in the last 8 years.
Sure.
So Irish defensive coordinator Al Golden was asked at his media session yesterday if he needed to amp his guys up to play USC. And here is the response.
And that needs to be said, you know, if you're watching Godfather 2 and Hyman Roth's talking to Michael Corleone, you know what's on in the background, right? It's Notre Dame, USC, and that's all we got to say. I mean, that's it at the end of the day. All right, so it's a great opportunity for us, and we're blessed to be a part of it, and our job is to honor that.
So I've got to ask you, first of all, Trevor, because you are a young pup. Have you seen Godfather 2?
I have. It has been a while since I have seen it, but I have seen The Godfather too.
Me too. I've seen the Godfather movies. I'm not as into the Godfather. Probably it feels like if you're an East Coast guy, like you're really into the Godfather, especially if you're Italian or Sicilian or whatever. I've seen them. I'm not as into it. That's not a reference that I would have made. But does hearing Al Golden just spit that out off the top of his head? Does it impact how you think of Al Golden?
It's nice to know that he does things outside of scheme up awesome defenses. You know what I mean? Like it's nice to know that he watches some movies in his free time. He's also from the East Coast, so it makes sense why he loves that movie.
Yep.
I unfortunately watched The Godfather like too young, I guess, because like I now have an appreciation for like better dialogue in movies and like really great plots. And when I watched
Which is why you're Quentin Tarantino and Glorious Bastards fit. By the way, in Glorious Bastards, I think we talked about it the last time you were on, or maybe the first whenever. It's been on one of the pay channels this month. So I have seen it multiple times since we talked last. So it's been very exciting.
It's fate. It's fate. Love it. I love it, man. But yeah, I mean, it's good reference. But outside of that, like I watched it too young. Like I watched it at an age where like I just wanted to see like fighting for 2 hours, just like nonstop action for 2 hours. So maybe I'll have to rewatch The Godfather this weekend. But no, I love the reference though. It was awesome.
Yeah, I liked it as well. But honestly, if I'm going to make a reference to a movie with Notre Dame USC on in the background, I'm going Die Hard. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you seen Die Hard?
Mm-hmm.
The guy who's down in the lobby, who is, like the security guy or whatever, there's a TV on in the background and he's watching Notre Dame USC. Now, not realistic considering Die Hard is, set at Christmas time, and Notre Dame and USC, even when the game is in Los Angeles, don't play at Christmas time, but still it's on in the background. So that would be my Notre Dame USC reference, would be Die Hard over Godfather 2. So I definitely would have remembered Die Hard. Like I said, I've seen Godfather 2. I didn't remember that, but I do like that. Like Al Golden has obviously seen it enough times that, he knows that that's part of the backdrop in Godfather 2. So I like the reference there.
Yeah, I like it too.
And by the way, he was nominated for the Broyles Award today, which goes to the top assistant coach in college football. No surprise. I would be shocked if he doesn't win this thing with the defense that he's got. But that being said, considering like it seems to like Notre Dame coaches like never seem to win these things for whatever, as good as they are. But like Al Golden's defense, I think it's highway robber if he doesn't end up winning this thing this year.
Well, I agree. And while we're on the topic of awards and highway robbery, I think it's criminal the fact that Xavier Watts isn't even a finalist for the Jim Thorpe. It's crazy.
Who's not a finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award?
Xavier Watts.
Really?
No. Nope.
Salty, did you post something about this? I honestly did not see what you're talking about. If you did post it, and it is Notre Dame USC. It's not Notre Dame Miami. I guarantee you it's Notre Dame USC.
There you go.
I would bet another, Vince trip around his house streaking that it's Notre Dame USC. But honestly, Salty, I didn't see it if you referenced that in there. Go ahead, Trevor.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, like, Xavier Watts is one of the best safeties in the country that just doesn't get any sort of recognition, which is crazy considering he won the Nagurski Award last year. But no, they put in Malachi Starks from Georgia, Caleb Downs from Ohio State, and some kid from Texas. And I have no idea what their stats look like off the top of my head, but the fact that Xavier Watts, the interceptions that he had last season, he's got some interceptions this year. He doesn't have nearly as many as he had last year. These awards tend to be heavily stat-based. It's like, what can you do to back up the nomination when you send it in to these awards? Yeah,
and it tends to go heavily on what kind of stats. I don't know how much actual game film, these guys actually watch when they're, going through these evaluations and handing out these awards.
Well, I think that's the frustrating thing is Caleb Downs is a finalist. He doesn't have a single interception on the season. Like these awards are just kind of slowly turning into just who you play for. Like, it's no mystery to me that the 3 finalists for the Jim Thorpe Award is, I mean, a safety from Ohio State, a safety from Texas, and a safety from Georgia.
Yeah. So these guys are saying that he has better stats than all of them. Okay. Well, then I have no idea, why.
It's the craziest thing.
Yeah.
I tweeted about it earlier today, and I mean, his stats are insane.
Honestly, I didn't even see that it had come out today because I was doing other stuff. So
Xavier Watts has allowed a 26.0 passer rating, 0 touchdowns allowed, 4 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and has an 89.2 coverage grade, and was not a finalist.
And there you go. And as Joe PM says, more interceptions than all of them. I don't know what to tell you. The guy obviously won the frickin' Nagurski Award last year.
Like I said, it's just about it's about what team you play for. It's not about, unfortunately. It is what it is.
Fill in the blank. It's blank that Irish special teams coordinator Marty Biagi says punter James Rendell will get at least 1 more year of eligibility at Notre Dame, possibly even more.
It's awesome if they stop making him rugby punt.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be awesome if they just let him kick like a normal punter, because when he has done it, he sends them. But I mean, no, that's awesome. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I watched. When's the last time Notre Dame had a punter in back-to-back years? Was it Jay Bramlett?
Man, it might have been. It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, because that's, the way they've done this thing. They've either gone to the transfer portal for kickers and punters, or in this case, all the way to Australia to get him. It's funny because I was talking yesterday about the Kansas punter who his mom came all the way from Australia, to come to his game last week. And then they played Colorado, and Kansas never punted against Colorado.
Yeah.
But that happened to James Rendell. Apparently his mom came, but she was smart. She came to the Virginia game, so she got to see him punt a couple of times. And then she also went to Yankee Stadium, even though he didn't get the punt at Yankee Stadium this past weekend. So she stayed out here for a week. And I mean, if you're going to come all the way from Australia, you should stay at least a week and go to 2 games, right? Not just 1. But I mean, I do think it's big because of what you're talking about, the consistency, 1, and 2, just having more time to work with this guy through the spring. And, because, they got the summer and stuff like that to work with him, but just to have him here, more familiarization, just let him be his natural self. I think that's the big thing. Like you said, why they keep asking him to do this rugby punting is beyond me, because when they just let him unleash that hammer, he lets it fly, and we got to see that.
I watched him going against Virginia, punting into the wind, have 58 yards of air time. It went 58 yards in the air into the wind. Just stop with the rugby punting thing. I don't understand it. I don't get why. I whatever. But yeah, no, it's cool. It's awesome. I mean, I'm a big believer that continuity at any position is huge. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, it's media's fault. We overhyped him. Well, we got to see him punt that first day of training camp, and we saw what that leg looked like. What we didn't see on that first day of training camp, or really, any of the rest of training camp, was all this rugby punt stuff. And, trying to get directional and, all these different things. It just feels like they've made it overcomplicated for him.
Yeah.
Okay. It is what they did. And if they just let him punt, I think that it would look a lot more like what it looked like against Virginia. Andrew says he disagrees. Rugby punts work. Look at Indiana. The kid booted it, but Downs had boom. Well, maybe that kid is, maybe he likes punting rugby style. I'm not saying rugby punts don't work, but obviously rugby punts are not James Rendell's forte.
Yeah, my beef with rugby punting, Mr. Gilmore, is not of the concept of it. It's who can do it. Right? I mean, if James Rendell is not good at rugby punting, which we have evidence of, then here's a crazy idea. Don't do it. I mean, I'm no Division I coach, but that seems pretty logical to me. So to clarify, I don't dislike rugby punting for its concept. I just
No.
don't like it when it's, not working with that specific punter.
I just don't like it specifically with James Rendell because he has shown that he is not as good at it as when he just gets back there and punts like a normal punter. Again, that's why we hyped this guy up so much. If you want to blame us for throwing the hype on this guy, we saw the massive leg and the precision that he had when he was punting in camp, but it took us a long time to see any of that because it just felt like they were making a punter think. And why do you need to make a punter think? Let him focus on catching the snap and then putting foot to ball and booting it as far as he can with as much accuracy as he can, because he sure seemed really good at that when we did get to see him in camp. So
sure. And he's been good at it when he does it in games.
Right.
So,
right.
But at the end of the day, to answer your question, I think it's exciting because it just adds continuity. And I'm a big believer that continuity in any position is good.
Do you buy or sell this week's Clemson South Carolina game as a play-in game for an at-large playoff berth?
I'll buy it for Clemson.
I'm in the same boat. I think South Carolina still needs a lot more help. Like they need some more chaos kind of going on in front of them. Clemson has become a bit of Trent, like even though they played, was it Wooford that they played last week, or who was it?
I think so.
Played? Yeah, someone along those lines. But like the fact that Texas A&M lost, and it's almost like they've kind of fallen upwards here the last couple of weeks. Just by the fact that it's like they got a couple nice quality wins. I agree. Like I think it is for Clemson. I think if Clemson wins this game, they're in really good shape because of the fact that you've got these 3-loss SEC teams. But South Carolina is still a 3-loss SEC team, and their resume is not better than either Alabama or Ole Miss. And they're not a better football team than Alabama or Ole Miss. So they're not getting in over one of those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's working against South Carolina right now is just the SEC is a very deep conference. And with them being, I'll have to look. Actually, I can pull it up right now because Clemson only has 1 loss in conference, whereas South Carolina has 3.
Right.
So, and Clemson is done playing ACC opponents. Like this is their last regular season game. They're going against South Carolina, who's in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it is much more of a play-in game for Clemson, and they just kind of have to hope that they, some other chaos happens between, who would it be? SMU and Miami, I suppose. But I think that it's more of a play-in game for Clemson.
I would concur with that. I'm looking back because Salty is very adamant about his Die Hard. Okay, here he goes. Also in Die Hard, when the guy at the security desk is trying to turn away the cop, Notre Dame versus Miami is on in the background. It's not Notre Dame Miami. It is Notre Dame USC. You have to trust me on that. Go find it. I mean, it's practically Christmas season. Die Hard's got to be coming on here pretty soon, right? I'll bet you a Yingling, Salty. How about that? Tony Kornheiser says Kalen DeBoer should be on the hot seat after losing to Oklahoma. Do you buy or sell that?
Sell. For the same reason that Marcus Freeman shouldn't have been on the hot seat in his first year head coaching at Notre Dame when they lost to Marshall. It's way too early. It's way too early. I don't think any coach should be on the hot, barring them doing something like illegal, right? I don't think that they should do anything to, I don't think any coach should be put on the hot seat after not even finishing his first full season. It's unrealistic to think that a guy is going to come in and replace what Nick Saban did, right? That's an impossible job, right? So I think that no, I'm selling that.
I sell it as well. I get that it's their first 3-loss season in like 14 years or whatever it is, but I don't think it's quite to that extreme yet. Now, maybe because it is their first 3-loss season in 14 years, like the people down there in Tuscaloosa and, wherever else down there in Alabama might feel differently. Lose to Auburn this week, and you could change my mind on that very quickly. Like if you're 4 losses and you finish the season with the loss to Auburn. But look, I've said all along that, Alabama of the last, going back to 2017. So basically it should have just been called Nick Saban's Alabama, because, if you look at the coaches who came, like the Shulas and the Prices and, all these people who came before Nick Saban and were just very average down there at Alabama, like Nick Saban turned Alabama into the power that it was when he was there. So, DeBoer, and like, just look at the fact that with the exact same quarterback, Nick Saban got to the college football playoff with all that, craziness they had going on at quarterback, starting 3 different guys early in the season, including Tyler Buckner and everything that went on. And they still ended up in the playoff. And now, like some of those people are gone, but it's a different head coach. It's a different world down there, but I don't think that he deserves to be on the hot seat right now.
No, I just think it's way too early. And plus it's just, I don't know, man. I'm just a big believer in giving a coach time. I am. And the coach that you're asking him to replace is the best coach of this generation. Arguably the greatest
Maybe
college
ever.
football coach of all time. Right. So, I mean, is potentially 9-3 a large fall off from being a playoff contender in a 4-team playoff? I mean, sure, but if the expectation was Kalen DeBoer is going to come in and pick up right where Nick Saban left off, like that's just delusional. I'd give him at least another year, because I think that's fair to give a coach enough time to build a program.
And there's big differences in the personality and the coaching style of these two guys as well. And I do think that there is, because Saban was so micromanager and hard-nosed and hands-on and everything else. Kalen DeBoer is just a different guy. So no, I don't think you should be judging him, based on year one when you are following a legend. But that's part of what comes with following a legend, is where you're not going to be judged nearly as fairly. You'd rather someone else had got the job and then got fired, and you come in 2 or 3 years later. So Andrew wants to know if North Carolina gives Al Golden a call. Nice job, he says. Golden would solve their defensive issues. I agree with all that. I mean, I think you'd be stupid if you're North Carolina not to call Al Golden. I think Al Golden is going to get a lot of calls. I think it's just going to come down to, with Marcus Freeman's staff, they have had a lot of success. And the more success you have, he kind of talked about it with those NFL comments last week. The more success you have, the more interest that you're going to have. It's going to come down to, does Al Golden want to be a head coach again or not? That's ultimately going to be it. Does he want to be a head coach again or not? Because if he wants to be a head coach again, specifically in college, he can go be a head coach. But he does seem pretty happy here at Notre Dame with everything. And as we were talking, you and I were talking before the show started, he did just sign a 4-year extension this offseason as well. And he's got a kid who's going to Notre Dame and the whole thing. So, like, if he wants to be a head coach, he will. But it's going to come down to that, just personal preference, what exactly Al Golden wants to do for the rest of his career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. And I think you could have also made the argument too that he probably got some calls in the offseason this past year after what he did for the Notre Dame defense in 2023, which probably led to the contract extension in February of this year. So, but no, you're 100% right. I mean, he is somebody that if he wants to go be a head coach in 2025, he can. 100%.
Yeah. Like you look at Clark Lee, Marcus Freeman, and even before that, Mike Elko, they were all at much different parts of their career, specifically Lee and Freeman, because of their age in comparison to Elko, who's a little bit older, but like he's younger than even Al Golden. But Golden's been around the block. He's been a head coach at a few different places. Does he want that again? It's
Sure.
It's ultimately going to come down to that. And he's had a heck of a lot of success being a coordinator here at Notre Dame, and he seems to like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, there's just some coaches that are just better focusing on one side of the ball too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sometimes that's just a coach's forte.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is him, but like I think someone just said it, but it is true. Some guys are meant to be coordinators and run their side of the ball, but not necessarily head coaches, and again, I'm not saying that that's him, but again, he's got enough experience at Temple in Miami. He knows what it takes, what goes into being a head coach and everything that comes with that. And like Miami is a high profile place as well. So he's coached at a high profile stop, so it's going to be really interesting. Like I would never say never. Unlike some people, I'll never say never, but he just feels like he really likes working at Notre Dame and everything that comes with being the defensive coordinator at Notre Dame.
Agreed. I agree.
Chris with a super chat earlier, he says, if Vince has to watch Gladiator, I have to watch Wicked. Find out what's wrong in Oz. Just in, Sean, the wizard will see you. Now, Vince volunteered that he was going to see Gladiator. I never made him see Gladiator. I have zero desire to see Wicked. Like, I remember growing up, Wizard of Oz, it was like once a year, the Wizard of Oz would come on. It was like an annual thing, back in the 3-channel days and all that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, we're up to see the wizard and whatever. I have no desire. Vince said he wants to see Gladiator 2. I already went to see Gladiator 2. We'll bring you our non-spoiler conversation at some point next week if he actually goes.
There you go.
It. Yes, Corey, I completely agree. Big difference between Gladiator.
I was about that was going to be my comment. I was like, I feel like that's a different kind of.
What does one have to do with the other?
Yeah. I was going to say it's okay. All right.
Trevor, NFL teams. There was a report on this recently. Interesting report. NFL teams eat between 3,600 and 4,300 Uncrustables per week. How many Uncrustables have you eaten in your lifetime is my question for you.
In my life? Gosh.
So this is going to be a pretty good number. You're in on the Uncrustables based on your initial response is what you're telling me.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you come from the right age bracket. So
yeah, no,
you probably grew up on these things, right?
Yeah. My parents never really bought them. Like, we just went old school and just made a peanut butter and jelly,
Right.
But college, yeah, I mean, it was the perfect thing to just kind of grab out of your fridge and just walk to on your way to class. And I mean, truth be told, it was like the easiest thing to buy for on like spring break. You know what I mean? Like, just throw 2 full boxes of them in a fridge. And I mean, Uncrustables are delicious. So
what kind of jelly? Do they give you jelly options? Like, do they have grape Uncrustables, strawberry?
Yeah, they have grape,
Uncrustables?
strawberry. Now they have Nutella ones. They have honey ones. They're good. They're really good. My wife swears up and down that they used to make grilled cheese Uncrustables, and I've never seen them. Can somebody in the chat throw in to see if they've ever seen it too? Because I've been dying on this hill that was never a thing, and she swears up and down that it was a thing. And the only thing that she has shown me as proof was a very grainy Google Images picture that looked like somebody made it on their laptop at home. So,
or maybe they experimented with it and then discontinued it.
Maybe. But
yeah, I guess we should explain to people because Jacoy Johnson Cole says, "Oh, what? First, are you strawberry or grape, Trevor? Which one are you?"
I'm grape.
Okay.
I'm grape.
I'm grape jelly as well. Like I'm a grape jelly guy. Like don't eat a whole lot of PB&Js, but like we just grew up making PB&Js. I don't know when Uncrustables came about. So for people who don't know what Uncrustables are, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and they take 2 pieces of bread and they basically wrap it around and they kind of, like pinch down the corners and cut off the crust. So it's like instead of like a Hot Pocket, it's a PB&J, peanut butter and jelly in your 2 little pieces of bread that don't have any crust on it. Hence Uncrustables. But apparently NFL teams just mow through these things in the locker room during the week.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it. I mean,
get a little energy, get a little calories in you,
Okay. We have it confirmed by Joe.
Oh, so the grilled cheese did exist, but they were discontinued. Okay. Yeah, facilitate, and it's round. It's like a little round, kind of like the size of the palm of your hand, basically. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I don't know that I have ever had. I might have tried one, like when the kids were younger, but it just didn't. Like to me, didn't appeal to me much.
Sometimes
like the bleached white bread and the whole thing.
Fair enough. Sometimes if you froze them and you ate it at the right time, like the peanut butter was still a little like crunchy. And
I've heard like if you toasted it, like toaster oven, like then that that can kick it up a little bit.
Yeah. No, it's good. I like Uncrustables. I have to go to the store tomorrow and get stuff for Thanksgiving. I think I might buy some Uncrustables. I'm not gonna lie.
Some Uncrustables for dessert for Thanksgiving.
Hey, listen, we're hosting this year, so I got the green light from the in-laws and from my mom that we can serve whatever we want to. So Uncrustables might have to make its way onto the menu.
All right. Sounds like a plan. All right. Well, that's going to do it. We're going to wrap it up. Trevor, appreciate you jumping in here today. I don't know what the rest of the week has in store. Obviously, Thursday, Thanksgiving, there won't be a show. I know you and Vince are doing a show tomorrow, right?
Yep. So Vince and I are doing Buy, Sell, Hold tomorrow.
Okay.
So that will be kicking off at 1 p.m. like normal. So make sure you guys have that notification bell on to know when we go live. And then obviously Thursday is going to be Thanksgiving. And then Friday, I will be back live with Brian and we're going to do Keys to Victory and I believe a mailbag.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. The Nutella one actually does sound good.
It is.
Steven. I'm a big Nutella fan. Vince can't stand Nutella, but I would not mind trying the Nutella personally. Yeah, so I'm traveling tomorrow down to the islands and then have games on Friday and Saturday. Notre Dame women play Utah Friday at 5:00. By the way, I said yesterday, turns out Cayman Islands are on Eastern time. We were originally told that it was Central time, but they are on Eastern time. So 5:00 tip-off Friday against Utah, 5:00 tip-off Saturday against TCU. I guess that'll be around halftime of the football game. So maybe you tune in a little bit for the basketball game. I don't even know if it's on TV or if it's streaming or what. I do know it's on radio though. So here in town, you can find it on 96.1 FM. And of course, anywhere around the country, you can go to the Odyssey app, AUDACY. The Odyssey app is where you can find all Notre Dame broadcasts, football, men's and women's basketball, and hockey. So that's it for me for the rest of the week. Have a great Thanksgiving. If you're traveling, of course, be safe. Enjoy your friends and family. Go Cowboys on Thursday. I don't know. We'll just say go Cowboys on Thursday. Go Irish this weekend. Have a great Thanksgiving, and I will talk to you next week. But Trevor and Vince and everybody else will talk to you for the rest of the week as well. Have a good one. Ivy Nation Sports Talk.